Chapter 3, Jainism and Buddhism. So in this chapter we will study what was the reason for these new religions to exist, or what was the reason that people left their old religion and they started to follow these new religions. So in the 6th century BC, the Aryan settlements expanded to the east, accompanied by rapid socio-economic and political changes. So in the 6th century BC, in Vedic civilization, we have already studied that the Aryan settlements, the Aryans, they proceeded gradually towards northern India, from northwestern to northern India. So they expanded their settlement to east. The Aryan settlements expanded to east, accompanied by rapid socio-economic. So why they went on gradually expanding their settlement? Because of socio-economic and political changes. Society at some places had traits. Traits means characteristics of tribal political organization. So in Aryan settlements, some societies they had this tribal political organization characteristics, while at some other places kingdoms were on the rise. So in some places there was this tribal political organization, while in some places there were the kingdoms. Materialism and spiritualism both existed side by side. So there were people who followed materialism, they were very much attracted to materialistic way of life, and there were people who were very much spiritual in nature. The people in the later Vedic age began to use implements and tools made of iron. So gradually they learned to use iron for making their tools and implements. The iron tools enabled them to clear forests. Iron being a very stronger and durable metal, so the weapons that were made out of iron, they were very strong. So that is why they were used for clearing forests, bringing more land under cultivation, and led a settled life. So agriculture increased because of this use of iron. Agriculture increased, and they brought more and more land under cultivation, and that is why they started living a settled life. As a result, there was surplus production of food grains. So since they brought more and more land under cultivation, so the production of food grain also increased. This surplus produce could be utilized by the kings to meet their military and administrative needs. So this excess production of food grains helped the kings to maintain their military as well as administrative needs. It could also be used by the people in the towns who specialized in various arts and crafts. This excess food production was also used by people who were specialized in various arts and crafts, because now they need not pay more attention to agriculture. They need not spend more time in agriculture. They had surplus production, so rest of the time they used to engage in some kind of arts and crafts. All these advantages enabled the people to lead a settled life and to expand further in neighboring areas. So these were all the significance, or these were all the reasons which enabled the people to lead a settled life. They started to do more and more agriculture, so they started to lead a more settled life, and that was the reason why they started expanding their neighboring areas. So this expansion resulted in wars between tribes. So once they started expanding the neighboring areas, that means the other tribes will now come in conflict, because they are using their the land of the other tribes. They are expanding their land to the land of the other tribes. So that is why this war started among the tribes. In these wars, the larger and more powerful tribes defeated the smaller ones and expanded their territory and created large kingdoms. So in these wars, obviously the smaller ones were defeated by the larger ones, and the larger ones, they started to expand their territory and created large kingdoms. Now no more they are tribal groups. Now they started to make their own kingdoms, create their own kingdoms. These kingdoms were called Janapadas. So these kingdoms, these larger kingdoms, they were called Janapadas, and a number of Janapadas joined together to form bigger and more powerful independent kingdoms. They were called Mahajanapadas. So one was Janapada, another one was Mahajanapada. So these larger kingdoms, they were called Janapadas. When many larger kingdoms, they joined together, they were called Mahajanapadas. The 6th century BC is regarded as an important epoch in world history, which saw the emergence of thinkers. So the 6th century BC is considered as an important event in the world history, because this was the time period when thinkers like Zarathustra or Zoroaster in Persia, Confucius in China, and Mahavira and Gautam Buddha, among many others in India. So these thinkers came into existence. These thinkers, 6th century saw the emergence of these thinkers. That is why 6th century is considered as an important event or important epoch in world history. In India, it was a period when orthodox religious beliefs and practices were challenged and even rejected by the new sects. So in India, Mahavira and Gautam Buddha, they were the religious thinkers, and they inculcated in the mind of the people to question the orthodox religious beliefs and practices were challenged and even rejected by the new sects. Of these sects, so there were many sects, among them Jainism and Buddhism emerged as the most potent religious reform movements. So next is the sources. The three important sources which provide information about Jainism and Buddhism are the following. First is Angas. First source is Angas. Jain scriptures are popularly known as Agamas, that is what comes out from the mouth of the Lord. So Jain scriptures, they are popularly known as Agamas. Agamas means anything that comes out from the mouth of the Lord. It is generally accepted that whatever Lord Mahavira taught after gaining omniscience was compiled by his disciples. So it was believed that Lord Mahavira, after getting omniscience means enlightenment. When Lord Mahavira attained enlightenment, so after that his teachings were compiled, means collected by his disciples in 12 parts called Angas. So his teachings were collected in this book, that is Angas. Sanskrit word for parts. Angas means in Sanskrit, this Angas is a Sanskrit word which means parts. So that is why they are 12 parts, means 12 Angas. These Angas are collectively known as Dwadashangi. So these 12 Angas, they were collectively known as Dwadashangi. The foremost of these Angas is Acharang Sutra. The first of all these Angas, there were 12 Angas. So the first one was the Acharang Sutra. Another well-known Anga is Vyakya Pragnapati, which is popularly known as Bhagavati Sutra. While the former deals with code of conduct, this Acharang Sutra, it deals with code of conduct which a Jain monk is required to follow, means the rules and regulations that the Jain monk is required to follow. The later expounds the Jain doctrines in a comprehensive manner. Later means this Bhagavati Sutra, it explains the Jain doctrines in a comprehensive manner, in a very easy manner. So based on these Angas, the Shiars also compiled 12 auxiliary works that came to be known as Upangas. So including these Angas, there were some 12 auxiliary works also. They were known as Upangas. So there were Angas and then the Upangas. It is said that these Angas and Upangas were not written for a long time. They were orally passed on by religious leaders to their people. So previously there was the system of education where teaching was given orally. So that is why it is believed that these Angas and Upangas, they were not written. Rather, it was passed down generation after generation orally. According to famous historian R.C. Majumdar, towards the close of the 4th century BC, a famine in South Bihar led to the exodus of an important section of Jainas headed by Bhadrabahu to South India. So it was according to this famous historian R.C. Majumdar, he said that towards the close of the 4th century BC, South Bihar faced a great famine, for which there was this exodus of an important section of Jainas. There was the eruption of this important section of Jainas. That important section was headed by Bhadrabahu to South India. This complete section of Jainas headed by Bhadrabahu, they proceeded to South India. Those that remained behind in Patliputra called for a council in order to revive the knowledge of the Angas. So this entire section of Jainas headed by Bhadrabahu, they proceeded to South India, and the remaining, they stayed behind in Patliputra, that is present day Patna. They called for a council and they wanted to revive the knowledge of the Angas. Revive means they want to bring back the knowledge of the Angas. The result was the compilation of 12 Angas. So this was the reason, this revival of the knowledge of the Angas, this was the reason that Today we have these 12 Angas. At another council held at Vallavi in Gujarat in the 5th or 6th century AD, a final collection of the scriptures was made for the first time in Ardha Magadhi Prakrit language. So the final collection of these scriptures were made in Vallavi in Gujarat. That was the council held at Vallavi in Gujarat, and there the final collection was made, and it was written in this language, that is Ardha Magadhi Prakrit language. The Angas are regarded as the most important part of the Jain doctrines. They discuss religious rites, stages of a householder's life, means everything is mentioned in these Angas. The way of life a person should lead, or the rules and regulations for a religion, the rituals for a religion, everything is mentioned in these Angas. So they discuss religious rites, stages of a householder's life, the vows of chastity means purity, rules of conduct, and other features of Jain philosophy. Everything is mentioned in these Angas. The next is the Tripitaka. So Angas was the Jain book. Tripitakas are the Buddhist books. Tripitakas are the most important literary works of the Buddhists. The word Tripitaka means three baskets of Buddhist canon. So Tripitakas itself means three, Pitakas means basket. So three baskets of Buddhist canon. The earliest writings of these texts were taken on long narrow leaves sewn together on one side and bound in bunches, then stored in baskets. So the earliest writings, they were not written on papers. They did not have paper at that time, so they used to write on these leaves, long narrow leaves. They were sewn together on one side, like on in a book it is like this one side it is sewn together. They sew it together and bound in bunches, then they collect it in bunches, then stored in baskets like this, as it is shown in the picture. They keep in this kind of baskets. Therefore, they were called the three baskets. So since there were three baskets, they were collected in these three baskets. So they were called three baskets or the three Pitakas. These works written in Pali language include the following. So this is the difference between the Angas and Tripitakas. That Angas were written in Ardha Magadhi Prakrit language. Tripitakas are written in Pali language. So these three Pitakas, they were written in. They were divided into three parts. First is the Vinaya Pitaka, deals with, so here are the three parts: Vinaya Pitaka, Sutta Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka. So these are the three parts, and what these three parts deals with: the Vinaya Pitaka deals with the rules and regulations which Buddha promulgated for the monks, means Buddha made for the monks. Vinaya Pitaka contains all those rules and regulations that Lord Buddha made for the monks. They were called bhikshus, and the nuns were called bhikshunis. It also gives an account of the life and teachings of Buddha. In Vinaya Pitaka, the life and teachings of the Buddha are also written, as well as some important aspects of ancient Indian history, customs, and arts of the period. What is comprised in Sutta Pitaka? The Sutta Pitaka comprises the discourses of Buddha on various occasions. It also has discourses by some of the disciples of Buddha, means the meetings or the teaching or the preachings given by Buddha on various occasions. The preachings by some of the disciples of Buddha, such as Sariputta, Ananda, and others. So these are all mentioned in Sutta Pitaka. All these preachings are mentioned in Sutta Pitaka. The Dhammapada, that is way of truth, is an important component of this Pitaka. So one of the most important component of Sutta Pitaka is Dhammapada, that means the way of truth, which comprises Buddha's teachings. Then the last one is the Abhidhamma Pitaka, deals with Buddhist philosophy. So it deals with this particular Pitaka deals with Buddhist philosophy. It describes things like the working of the human mind and the state of matter. So how the human mind works, the state of matter, all these things are mentioned in Abhidhamma Pitaka. So these are the three parts of Tripitakas. Besides being the most reliable source of information about Buddhist religion and philosophy, the three Pitakas provide a glimpse of the social, economic, and political life in the age of the Buddha. So from these three Pitakas, we not only get the knowledge about the religion and the philosophy of Buddha, but we also get the knowledge about the way of life of people during that time, their social life, their economic life, and their political life. Then next source is Jatakas. Jatakas refer to the tales which describe the previous births of Buddha in both human and animal form. So these Jatakas are actually stories which describes the previous births of the Buddhas, in human form also and in animal form also. Each tale begins by noting the occasion that prompted its telling and ends with the Buddha identifying the lives of the people in the introductory story with such people from the past. So each tale, it begins by noting the occasion that prompted its telling, why this occasion started. So that was the beginning of the tale, and ends with Buddha identifying the lives of the people in the introductory story with such people from the past. The future Buddha may appear in them as a king. So it also, in this tales, it is also mentioned that the future Buddha may appear to these people in the form of a king or an outcast. Outcast means lower caste, a god or an elephant. But in whatever form he exhibits some virtue that the tale thereby highlights, means the lesson that the tale highlights. So he may take birth in any form, but whatever form it may be, he exhibits some virtue, some good characteristics that the tale thereby highlights. Many Jataka tales have parallels in the Mahabharata and elsewhere in non-Buddhist literature. So many Jataka tales, you will find many Jataka tales have parallels, have similar stories in the Mahabharata and elsewhere in non-Buddhist literature also. The Jataka stories have also been illustrated frequently in sculpture and paintings throughout the Buddhist world. If we visit any Buddhist monument or Buddhist temple, we can see that the sculptures and paintings also illustrate us the life of Buddha, or illustrates the Jataka stories. According to A.K. Wardar, the Jatakas are the precursors to the various legendary biographies of the Buddha which were composed at later dates. Although many Jatakas were written from an early period which described previous lives of the Buddha, very little biographical material about Gautama's own life has been recorded. So although many Jatakas were written from early period, from very early period, many Jatakas were written still which describe previous lives of the Buddhas, but very little biographical material we get about Gautama Buddha's own life, means about his own life we get very little knowledge. However, the Jatakas throw significant light on the political, economic and social conditions. But still Jatakas are important. We get very little knowledge about Gautama Buddha's own life. Still Jatakas are very important because we get a view of their political, economic and social life of the people from the 5th to the 2nd century BC. They also reflect Buddhist morals, ethics and principles. So these are also mentioned in the Jatakas, which we come to know from which we come to know about the Buddhist morals, ethics and principles. Then causes for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism. Why Jainism and Buddhism emerged? So these are the reasons why Jainism and Buddhism emerged as new religions. First is reaction against ritualism. So the religious ceremonies, they were very expensive. The previous religions, they started ceremonies that were very expensive and they were beyond the means of the ordinary people. So some priests hardly realized the sufferings of the common man. They did not realize that the common man are unable to pay the expenses for such rituals. There was an important cause that gave rise to faiths that were simple and inexpensive. So that is why these religions started, which gave rise to faith, but which was very simple and inexpensive. So this expensive ritualism was one of the reasons why people left their old religion and started to follow these new religions, because these new religions, they were simple and inexpensive. The next is corruption in religion. Corruption crept into religious practices. There was corruption, already we studied about one corruption, that the ritualism was becoming expensive. So there were these kind of corruptions that crept into the religious practices. In order to extract money, the priests encouraged ordinary people to perform yajnas and conduct household rites beyond their means. So we already studied that it was the rituals, they were becoming very much expensive. So why they were becoming expensive? Because the priests, they were with the aim of extracting money from the ordinary people through these kind of means of yajnas and some kind of household rites. Kshatriya rules protested against the dominance of such practices. So the Kshatriyas, they were very much they were protesting against these kind of practices, against this kind of expensive practices. The common man could not reconcile to this attitude of the priests. They were unable to pay this kind of expenses to the priests. Both Jainism and Buddhism were founded by two Kshatriya princes. So since the Kshatriyas, they were against this kind of rituals, that is why Jainism and Buddhism were both founded by two Kshatriya princes. Means Lord Mahavira, Lord Buddha, they were both Kshatriya princes. So this was the second reason, that was corruption in religion. Then rigid caste system. Hinduism was dominated by these castes like Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. Gradually what happened, these castes became very rigid, very strict. It did not allow any social mobility. Social mobility means these castes they became so strict that people cannot do occupation out of their own choice. They have to follow the family tradition. So there was very little social mobility. The lower castes they were not allowed to the places of higher castes. So there was very little social mobility. A person of one caste could not become a member of the other caste. There were restrictions on the basis of caste on food, drinks and marriage. So on the basis of caste, there were also restrictions on food, drinks and marriage. Interchange of caste was impossible. So these were all the strictness that we could see that the castes gave to the people. So that is why people started to look for some other religion which did not have any kind of caste system. Then the next is difficult language. Sanskrit was considered a sacred language. Most of the Vedic literature was composed in Sanskrit. The priestly class gave discourses and chanted mantras in this language. The priestly class, they praised and they also chanted mantras in Sanskrit language. But this Sanskrit language was beyond the understanding of common people. The Sanskrit language was only understood by educated people. So that is why many people began to look for an alternative religion that they could understand better, that praised in common language, so that the common people can understand the religion in a better way. Then political situation. In the 6th century BC, Magad was ruled by Bimbisara and later by Ajatashatru. Both these rulers were liberal and tolerant. They were both these leaders, Bimbisara and Ajatashatru, they were having a kind and liberal attitude. They too were free from Brahmanic influence and condemned certain social evils. Condemned means they rejected certain social evils in their kingdoms. When the opportunity came, they patronized both Jainism and Buddhism. They started to follow Jainism and Buddhism. Then next is the agricultural economy. Killing of animals to perform sacrifices was against the interests of the farmers in the Gangetic Valley. Hinduism was strictly dominated by these sacrifices of animals, but farmers, they were against killing of animals because animals were very much helpful to them. The use of iron had made the animal-drawn ploughing popular. Such farmers needed a religion that would give protection to animals so that these animals can be used for farming. So both Jainism and Buddhism preached non-violence and were against animal sacrifices. So that is why they started to look for a religion which will protect the animals, and Jainism and Buddhism provided those kind of non-violence attitude, and they also, these religions were also against animal sacrifices. So now we'll start with Jainism. The doctrines of the Jains were preached by saints or acharyas called Tirthankaras. So the saints, the Jain saints, they were called the Tirthankaras. They preached Jainism they preached this Jainism was preached by the saints or acharyas. They were called the Tirthankaras. 23 Tirthankaras preceded Mahavira. Before Mahavira, there were 23 Tirthankaras. The first Tirthankara was Rishabdev. Rishabdev was the first Tirthankara. And the 23rd was Parshvanath. So the 24th one, the last one was Lord Mahavira. The first one was Rishabdev, the 23rd one was Parshvanath, and the last one was 24th one was Lord Mahavira. Vardhamana Mahavira. Mahavira was the 24th and the last of the Tirthankara. He made Jainism popular and systematic. That is why Mahavira is considered as the founder of Jainism. So these Tirthankaras were not considered as the founder of Jainism because Mahavira made Jainism a more systematic and popular religion. That is why Lord Mahavira is considered as the founder of Jainism, and he was also the last Tirthankara. Mahavira was born in Kundagrama near Vaishali in Bihar in the second half of the 6th century BC. His father was the chief of the Kshatriya clan and his mother Trishala belonged to the royal family of Lichavis. Mahavira received his early education in all specialized branches. He is said to have been very brave and to have saved his colleagues from dangers. For these deeds of bravery, he was called Mahavira because he saved his colleagues because he was very much brave. That is why he was being called as Mahavira. At the time of his birth, his father's kingdom was prosperous, so the boy was called Vardhamana, that means prosperity. He got absorbed in spiritual pursuits from early childhood. From very early childhood, he was very much inclined to all kind of spiritual pursuits. He was married to Yashodha. This was done in order to divert his attention from asceticism. So since he was very much inclined towards spiritualism, that is why his father made him married to Yashoda at a very young age, so that his attention will be diverted from this asceticism. At the age of 30, after the death of his parents, Mahavira renounced the world. He left the world and roamed about as an ascetic, practicing severe penance for 12 years. Severe penance means severe meditation. So after his parents died, he left his world, he left his family, he left his luxurious palace, and he roamed around practicing severe penance for 12